Alrighty, hi everyone. Welcome to ATA Notes English Revision Lectures. I hope you guys are all doing really well and having a lovely holiday. A balanced holiday, I would say, since you're getting ready for the big day soon. So welcome. Today we do have a lot to get through, and I am hoping that you will leave this lecture feeling confident and comfortable and excited for what's to come, and less uncertain as well on all that you have to sort of do, or rather what you have to do for the exams. So a very warm welcome to everyone from all of us here at ATA Notes. Welcome to the lecture. So before I get started, as you sort of now move into the tail end of the year and your HSC journey, we've still got amazing resources that you can still access and have, and hopefully find them helpful, including study notes, which are downloadable. So if you're looking for some last minute notes to add to your collection and consolidate your knowledge, definitely check those out. We obviously have these lectures running, and for every subject we've got a revision lecture happening, so make sure you check that out as well. We also have Head Start lectures, so if you want to sort of go through anything that we did, you did at the beginning of the term or something, or beginning of the year rather, and if you want to revise on that, feel free to attend those lectures. So you've got, you can sign up for as many as you want. We obviously have online discussion forums as well, so if you are looking for that peer support, it's a great forum, it's a great place, it's a great space for like-minded individuals to sort of connect and to talk. There's also lots of discussions around like uni processes and so on, so if you want some guidance into that, I think it'd be really cool to check it out. We also have videos, newsletters, ADA calculator that some of you may have already used, some of you may be wanting to use it now, so you can also check that out. We also have lots of articles, and especially on like time management, approaching the exams, so if you want to check those out, they'd be really helpful as well. And we also have lots of other stuff going on our website, so check it out, and you can register and then access all of these resources at atanotes.com/register. Alrighty, so let's get started. We are crossing the finish line. That's what we are sort of getting close to, and the purpose of this lecture is to help you, like I said, feel confident. That's and feel sort of knowledgeable about all that you have to do, all that is expected from you. Now, before we start, this is a recorded lecture. So this is a recorded lecture, however, I will be live answering your questions, so please ask however many questions you want to ask. There's no restrictions, no question is a silly question at all. Ask away, but yeah, just be please be respectful in the live chat, and ask questions. Like, you're not limited to just asking questions about English. You can ask about uni, you can ask about HSC, you can ask about other subjects as well, the ones that I do, and I'll just sort of talk you through which subjects I did. So if you have any questions at all, please ask. You should be able to access the slides as well that I'm using today just underneath this this portal, I guess, just underneath the screen where you can see me. You should be able to access the slides, and I'm like pointing down to my screen like a YouTube subscriber, like click the subscribe button. No, but it should be there, and obviously ask questions live. So let's get started. My name is Aditi, and I graduated in 2021, which is, God, 2 years now. It's crazy. I graduated as the Ducks with an ADA of 95 and band 6s in English Extension, Advanced, PD, and Biology. So if you want to ask any questions regarding that, feel free to. I also did Maths 3 unit and Chemistry. Now, I may not be the best person to ask Maths and Chem questions, but if you want to ask about how I studied for it and so on, feel free to ask that as well. But I'm sure definitely attend the Maths revision lectures and so on if you want to get more expert knowledge knowledge from that, but I'm your English person here. Also, I am studying at the University of Sydney. I'm studying a Bachelor of Science and Bachelor of Advanced Studies in Medical Science as a Del Scholar, and I'm majoring in Medical Science and Political Economy. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask away. Finally, love reading, good shows, sunny days. Today is a very sunny day, which is really nice. It's pretty hot. So it's pretty good. I'm loving the fact that summers are here, and I'm sure you guys are so excited to finish the exams and then enjoy the summer off. I'm sure that's going to be really, really exciting. So you're almost there. You've got a lot happening. You're going to get through it. So let's get started. Okay, so like I said, and please excuse me for my consistent coughing. I've just come down with a viral. Yeah. Yeah, got it from my sister actually, so alrighty, so but hopefully my voice will carry us through. I'm all good, there's no issues with that, just a sore throat and a bit of cough. So my goal for this lecture is to give you a too long don't read kind of summary of English Advanced course, right? And I kind of want to walk you through the key ideas and the key skills that you're going to need, and that you kind of want to refine in these next couple of days as you prepare for the HSC. We're going to quickly go through all of the modules, and I am going to, or rather my goal is to concisely talk you through the key things that you should be doing, that you should have done in your essays, that you should be, and things that you should be aware of when it comes to like essay questions and stuff. So we're going to hack the common mod, we're going to look at perfecting our module A thesis, and also talk about contextual integration, because that's like one of the key areas where generally mod A essays tend to lack. We're going to look at juggling the demands of the module B, because that's definitely, there's a lot going on there, and we just want to make sure that we are going through everything, and we are also going to look at preparing for the unknowns of module C. So in the end, we'll also go through we will also go through some general study skills. We'll talk through some tips for the exam, and like I said, please ask any questions that you have. I want you to walk away feeling that all your questions are answered, that you have a very clear idea of what is expected of you. That's my goal. So let's get started. So at the end of the module, you should be able to do the following for all the modules. You should understand what the marker wants explored. You should know how to dissect a question. And that, I guess, is something that's often overlooked, because, you're like, oh, it's English, it's going to be either to what extent evaluate question. And it's pretty straightforward. And, you may not actually think about dissecting English question the same way you might break down a biology or a chemistry or even a maths question. So you're going to talk through that and make sure that you know how to actually get all the important elements of the question out of the question, understand them, and then put them in your thesis. Also, write some amazing thesis. Obviously, we want to do that, because the first thing that the marker looks at, the first thing they read, and the first thing that forms their judgment of your work is your thesis. And markers can tell from the thesis whether, what the quality of the writing is. Like, it's pretty easy for them to tell. So we want to make sure that we show them from that first thesis, that first sentence, that you know what you're talking about. And also be able to structure your analysis, essays to suit the unit. And hopefully, and now I know you may not feel this right now, but I'm hoping that you may have enjoyed some text. If you haven't, that is totally okay. But I hope you've appreciated English a bit and appreciated literature a bit. Now, if you're a reader, I'm sure you probably did. You probably appreciated the text. If you haven't, that's okay. That's okay. You've made it through the course. So you know what? That's actually pretty good in itself. But yeah, think about what you can take away from the unit in terms of your critical analysis skills, in terms of your writing and your communication. That's always a good skill to take away. So let's get started. Yeah, I'm gonna obviously make sure that I am sticking to time, because I do tend to talk a lot, as I'm sure you could tell. Like, every slide I've spent like 5 minutes talking, so I do tend to go off track a bit and talk, and if in live, like a live lecture, I'm sure I'd be like talking to you in the audience and the slides will just be there. So I'm glad I can look at the slides, focus on my slides, but what I'm going to focus on, sorry. So what I am going to focus on is sticking to time. That's my goal as well. So let's have a look at the learning outcomes in a sense. So as you may have realized, may not have realized, is that all the modules they build up on one another. They are interconnected at the core, and you're learning something new from each module, right? With Common Mod, you start off by learning about the purpose of writing. You learn about why. You learn about the importance of representation in writing. Writing is a form of representation. Literature is representation of different experiences and ideas and emotions. And then from there, you look at the importance of context and the importance of authorial intent when you look at Module A. And then you move on to Module B, where you look at the actual construction of a text, right? You look at form, you look at language, you look at ideas, how they're all coming together. And then Module C, you look at audience reception. And that's where you look at how do we actually, put everything together to make our own piece, which has a specific person that is trying to reach a certain audience. So that's kind of what I want you to sort of keep at the forefront of your mind. You have the skills that you need across the 4 modules to write good essays, to write a good module C piece, because you've learned how texts are created and all of that already. So feel confident in that. Know that has an impact on your writing, that has an impact on your understanding. So you're already more than halfway there. So don't I guess discount the hard work that you've put in, learning the whole 4 modules. So let's start off with the human experience, key concepts, and what we have to do. Now that little tweet there, or is it still called a tweet because it's on X now? Probably, I don't know. But that little post there, the only collective human experience. No, that's Facebook. Sorry, I don't know why I thought that was Twitter. That's Facebook. Whoops. So the only collective experience I can see in that exam is my hatred for English, which I shared across the year 12 cohort. Very fair. That's a very fair post to put out after you've done your first HSC exam, but I'm hoping you guys feel pretty confident, after the exam. So you're posting, something similar, but more confident in how you went. So here is the rubric. I won't go through it. I'm hoping that you have a really good understanding of the rubric by now. You've looked at it this time last year. You started off by looking at it. Well, I mean, not exactly this time because it's still the holidays, but like around this time last year. So I'm hoping you have a good understanding of it. If you don't, I suggest to go back, read through it, jot down the keywords and the key ideas, because this is where your question's coming from, right? NSA is bounded by the syllabus. This is the question they're going to come. This is where the question's going to come from. So you have to make sure you have a good understanding of the syllabus and what it wants you to do. The second 2 paragraphs are pretty technical, like it's more so looking at your writing, and what you have to do, and also talking about unseen text, which is part of paper 1, section 1. It's the first 2 paragraphs that's more so related to what you want to find in text. So that's where the questions are generally concentrated: individual, collective experiences, anomalies, paradoxes. Form is also a very important one. So last year we had a form question, so that's to sort of show you do not sacrifice on form. You need form. You have to talk about form and discuss context as well. So let's have a look. Now, the 3 main ideas here that I kind of want you to take away, just a little summary of the rubric, is that A, texts are a mirror to experiences. This mirror helps the audience understand something. And then finally, the mirror is created by the author, who has their own personal agendas, their own personal intent that they are trying to convey. So remember, the key word in this unit is representation. It is at the crux of everything This unit is all about understanding that your text, the aim of your text is to represent something. It is to bring to light an idea, to bring to light experiences, and, reflect particular lives and cultures. And so representation is the key to this unit. So that means it's all about how text communicate ideas, how they can act as a reflection of the world around us, right? And how they reflect the world around them. And the world around them includes the context, the purpose around which the text was written. Hannah Arendt says something similar. So humans engage in narratives in order to better understand the significance of our actions, because we cannot fully understand them in the moment. She argues that narratives form our identity. So the texts that you study, essentially, they act as a way to better understand the world around us, and also to better understand our role as individuals within the world, within collective institutions and societies. So, in the exam, essentially, there are a few options that NESA can confront you with, right? And they generally fall into these two categories. They can give you a generalized question, or they can give you a text-specific question. And under these categories, you can be given a stimulus quote, you can be given an extract from the text, or you can just be given a simple statement that's ripped from the rubric. They can also do that. Just a simple statement like storytelling to reflect particular lives and cultures. To what extent does your text, does the prescribed text resonate with your understanding of storytelling as a mirror of society? So questions like that can be straight from the syllabus. They can also give you extracts from the text and then either pinpoint a specific idea they want you to talk about, or a specific theme that they want you to talk about, or I think those are the two main ones. They generally, with module B, they can be like, you talk about language features. They can do that in common mod, but it's not as common. So regardless of whatever the question is, they all have the same path forward. So let's have a look. Now, this is one of the best ways to break down the question, and I might be a bit biased, but because we created it here at TuteSmart, but I reckon it is a pretty good way forward to break down the question. Firstly, consider what is the task word. To what extent? Evaluate, discuss. Discuss is actually kind of common. It's usually evaluate or to what extent. Discuss can be in there, but generally not as much. So that's the first step. What is a rubric word? A second step is, what is the rubric focus? So if you don't know the rubric really well, you won't know what the focus of the rubric is, what exactly, like, where are they coming from, what do they want you to focus on. Remember, markers, they want to see that you've engaged with what they wanted you to engage with, and what they wanted you to engage with is a rubric. So they want to see if you've engaged with the rubric, if you have studied the text in the way they wanted you to study the text. So step 2 is, what is the rubric focus? Step 3 is, what is the prescribed focus of the question? Now the prescribed focus is, like, for example, the main idea that they want you to talk about. So it could be a theme, it could be an idea in the text, it could be a technical feature of the text, for example. So that's a prescribed focus. Finally, step 4 is the audience mention. Now that is your interpretation. So the first 3 steps, those are your keywords. That's the key ideas that you have to incorporate in your thesis. And then step 4 is your interpretation, is the audience mention. Now mentally, you want to know all these 4 things before you approach a question, and they'll tell you what to look at throughout the essay and what you constantly want to come back to as well. So, if you've got a question here, to what extent does the exploration of human experience in the crucible invite you to reconsider your understanding of love? So this is from the 2019 HSC. Now, we can see here that firstly, the rubric focus is the rubric focus is human emotions arising from human experiences. So to what extent does the exploration of human experiences in the crucible invite you to reconsider your understanding of love? So love is human emotion, and they're asking you, how does it arise from human experience? That's our rubric focus. Prescribed focus is love, right? So they want us to specifically focus on how the text is asking us to reconsider our understanding of love. So that is our prescribed focus. And then finally, our audience impact can be anything. So you have the liberty to sort of decide your audience impact. However, yeah, like you kind of want to choose one that best fits your argument, and in this case we'll go with it challenges our assumptions, and the text challenges our assumptions of love, and it does. So that's the three main ways, sorry, that's the three key elements, steps that you kind of want to follow and break down the question into before you start writing. I always like to say that, you'd rather spend a minute, 2 minutes, even 3 minutes planning your response out, knowing exactly what you're going to write, rather than to like jump straight into writing, trying to sort of write any ideas that come to head, and then halfway through the halfway through the essay, realize you don't know where you're going, or you don't know, yeah, you like, you have no idea how you're gonna link it back to the question. So it's so much better to like plan it out first, rather than to be lost halfway through the exam and have no idea where you're gonna go with it. Or to like discuss, or to have an idea later on. So like having your second half of the essay relate to the question and not knowing what you did in the first half. Remember, your markers can tell from the thesis. They can immediately tell whether or not you're trying to answer the question, or if you're just trying to, like squeeze in a pre-written essay. And that's one of the things we'll talk about. But in summary, do not memorize essays. I don't recommend it. I know it may work for some people. If you're lucky, it's really good. However, just in case on the day you do get a question that you can't adapt to, you don't want to be in that situation where you're so reliant on just like molding your essay to the question, and then being able, and then if you get like an abstract question, for example, that can be hard to mold like any pre-prepared essay to. So I would recommend to know your analysis, know your own views for that will form the base of your thesis, and then write to the question. You never want to make the question fit your essay. You always want your essay to fit and to answer the question. Okay, so how do we answer this question? Let's have a look. A good thesis essentially says two things. It firstly tells the marker that you understand the question, and secondly, it tells the marker that this is your answer. Simply restating the question with an added significantly or to great extent does not achieve it. Just repeating the question back does not tell the marker anything. Like, it does not show them that you've answered the question, and it definitely does not show them that you understand the question. To them, it shows rather that you don't understand it because you've just repeated it back to them. So if I just say the Crucible invites audiences to reconsider their understanding of love through the exploration of human experiences, that is basically saying the same sentence back, just changing a bit of the structure and taking out to what extent. I could even say to a significant extent, the Crucible invites audiences to reconsider their understanding of love through the exploration of human experiences. That does not tell the marker anything. You need to elaborate on that. You need to add to that. So given this is the human experience, your answer is going to evoke the purpose of the composer and what is achieved from an audience perspective. Basically saying, what does the composer say, and then how is the audience reacting to that? So that's really, really important. For example, texts that explore the impact of ideological manipulation can better allow us to understand what its insidious impact on communal love. Indeed, by demonstrating how love and togetherness can be eroded, composers offer a stark warning to audiences, prompting them to aspire to unity in the face of tumult. Broadly, all of your theses have to kind of follow this pattern. Like, follow this pattern. You can obviously change things around, but this is kind of the key. The key effect that we're going for. So you can see here that with those two lines, they elaborate on that. They're not just saying that, it's asking us to reconsider our understanding of love, but what exactly is it showing about love? what exactly is it asking us to reconsider? So texts that explore the impact of ideological manipulation can better allow us to understand its insidious impact on communal love. So we're focusing on ideological manipulation as part of the human experience, and we're focusing on love in terms of communal love. Indeed, by demonstrating how love and togetherness can be eroded, composers offer a stark warning to audiences, prompting them to aspire to unity in the face of tumult. And the second sentence is really good in linking the audience impact to the main idea, that to the thesis, to what exactly does the composer want us as readers to take away from it. So yep, like I said, that's kind of a broad pattern for your thesis. So texts that which explore, link to the expanded question, allow for audiences to reflect or understand a certain idea. Indeed, through the examination, a composer can challenge whatever, however it relates back to the question, and then it prompts the audiences to, respond in a certain way, to do something in a certain way. So once you've done that, you will then flesh it out and link it back to context, purpose, and form. So here I've got another question for you. The purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think upon. This is by Brandon Sanderson, and we have to evaluate this statement in relation to a prescribed text. So So texts allow for the challenging of traditional ideas, a storyteller inviting the audience to question and critically reflect upon their own world. So here, as you can see, they're exactly telling us what we are, what is the text doing. And what we can also see is that they start off with a general thesis that expands on the question, and then they link it to the text. So you can definitely do that. And you can definitely, have that first thesis, like that first sentence linking to the text. It doesn't matter, as long as it obviously is a solid thesis and it answers the question. So texts allow for challenging of traditional ideas, a storyteller inviting the audience to question and critically reflect upon their own world. And so does this link back to the question? The purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think upon. So type in the chat if you reckon that thesis answers the question. I'll give you a minute. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys said yes, because yes, it does. It's saying that storytellers, they challenge traditional ideas, and through that they give us ideas to think upon. So Arthur Miller's The Crucible provides exactly this, with Miller's allegorical dramatic exploration of the Salem witch trials being used to directly comment on his Cold War American context, and prompting the audience to challenge the representations in the story that manifest in their own world. Now, this is where we see how the answer, the thesis, is linked back to the question. So we're linked, and so another thing that I always recommend in all your essays is to introduce context and form from the very beginning. So we can see here they introduce Miller's allegorical dramatic exploration. So it's an allegorical drama, and in terms of context, it is exploring the Salem witch trials to comment on the McCarthyist America, on his Cold War American context. So, and then linking that to what exactly is that doing. So that is challenging his audiences to it's prompting his audiences to challenge the representations in the story that manifest in their own world. It's giving people questions to think upon so that they can question or challenge, rather, the the structures and the representations that they see within their own society, within their own context. So through the lens of his allegory, Miller represents the manipulation of authority, the detrimental impacts of societal intolerance, and the perverse nature of hysteria, questioning the continuing prevalence. Thus, through his storytelling, Miller provokes the audience to think upon questions of lingering tradition explored in the text. The last two parts here that are really important is, firstly, signposting your paragraphs, and then secondly, audience impact. That's really important. So Application the exam. Now this is a generalized pattern. There are so many of these. You can choose whichever one you want. But we've got this there. So we start off with Q, which is question. We go on to E, expand. Then T, text. A, argument. L, length. So we start off with the question, the Q. So here we are answering the question. Text allow for the challenging of traditional ideas. Then we introduce the text. Arthur Miller's The Crucible provides exactly this. And then we expand on the question, prompting the audience to challenge the representations in society that manifest in their own world. Then this is our argument that we can see this through these three themes. And finally, this is our link back to the question that through his storytelling, Miller is the one who is provoking the audience to think about these traditional to think about the lingering tradition that was explored in his text. Alright, so that's a human experience thesis and introduction. Now, when it comes to the body paragraphs, let's have a look. Now, you want to extend that critical dissection of your text purpose and context into your paragraphs. So that's where you'll get the marks. And when we look at a piece of analysis, we want to do a couple of things. Now, this is a little formula. This is not, set in stone, but this was created by one of our amazing tutors, and it's really, really good in sort of highlighting the key sort of areas that you want to focus on within the paragraph. So we're going to start off with a unique idea, which is adding to the paragraph theme. We then want to quote, we then want to substantiate that idea with a quote and a technique. And then we want to focus on the effect of that technique. What is the technique doing? And finally, we want to then talk about how what the audience understands as a result of that. What do they understand as a result of that idea being explored? And then with each one, you kind of want to sort of skip you kind of want to move around with these, but you definitely want to make sure that each time you at least either link back to the composer's purpose, link back to the way in which it is being impacted by the context, or you can link it back to how the audience receives and acts on the message. You can also do that. Okay, let's have a look now. So this is a body paragraph. Let's have a look. So Miller exposes the perverse nature of centralized power. That's a unique idea, and I'll keep flipping through the slides so you remember the colors. That's a unique idea. Through his use of conversationalist authorial commentary, that's a technique. Immediately revealing his purpose in choosing the allegory of Salem. So that's his purpose, composer's purpose, to expose political policy being equated with moral right. That's a quote. Remember, every time you have a quote, you need to talk about the technique and also the effect. That is the key. Remember, your essay is not an explanation, it is an argument. You are analyzing and arguing for a certain idea. You're arguing for whatever idea you've discussed in your thesis. So you got to make sure that you structure it in that way. Alrighty, so where are we? So in choosing the allegory of Salem to expose political policy being equated with moral right, directly highlighting to readers, now that purple there is the effect of the technique, his desire to confront the audience with an inherently negative portrayal of theocracy. And that is what the audience is taking away as a result. Thus, Miller too aspires to manipulate his purpose, his Cold War era audience, that's context, against traditional power structures through his text. And that purple is what the audience is receiving and how they're acting on it, or how they should act on it. Evident further in the emphasis Miller has Paris place on his ministry at stake over his daughter's very life. In doing so, Miller attempts to truly expose authority figures and their desire to manipulate theocratic values in order to gain personal benefits. And that's another unique idea we're now influencing as a result of the effect. So, highlighting the potential expense of ignorance towards greater societal issues, and that is our audience affect. Such manipulation of ideology sustained with a subverted biblical illusion, in which Abigail threatens to come to the girls in the black of some terrible night and bring a reckoning. So this directly reflects Miller's experiences with un-American activities, and prompts the audience to recognize such subversions of ideology. And that's our effect. Motivated by maintaining and strengthening social power. As the play unfolds and the social degradation of Salem is portrayed, and that's another unique idea, Miller in the final pages firmly asserts his own motivations for such attacks. So that's his purpose, his personal purpose, his authorial intent. Using his authorial intrusion once again to reveal, for all intents and purposes, the power of theocracy in Massachusetts was broken. Such commentary is undoubtedly ironic, and acts as a dire warning to the audience, suggesting that the only way for modern America to be free from the constraints of centralized authority is to undergo societal erosion. And that's what the audience takes away, ultimately prompting against further development of seemingly autocratic power structures. So as you can see here, there are a couple of things that I want to point out to you. Firstly, with every new piece of evidence, we're introducing a new idea. That is so important, so important. Every time you talk through a new, piece of evidence, the idea has to be new as well. It can't just be one idea and 4 quotes to substantiate that one idea. As you can see, every idea has a quote. That's really important, and they're not just one word quotes, because you can't discuss much, you can't elaborate much with one word quotes. So make sure you've got plenty of quotes, and when you've got the quotes, you need to talk about the effect in detail as well. And then finally, remember audience impact, and you can sort of move and sort of switch around between what audience understands as a result, and then how they received and act on the message. Okay, so when it comes to short answer questions now, common module, you can use the exact same question analyzing technique for short answers and for essays. There's no difference there whatsoever. So look for the task word, look for the rubric, look for the other focus, the prescribed focus, and then the audience. Now the audience may not always be there, but you kind of want to have that audience impact. So here we are. We've got the short answer question. So analyze how language forms and features have been used to explore paradoxes in the human experience. This is a 4 marker. So from the rubric we can see paradoxes, key part of the rubric. You want to know what paradoxes, anomalies, and inconsistencies are. So prescribed focus here is language forms and features, because that is what we have to analyze to explore how paradoxes are shown in the human experience. And finally, the audience impact it could be anything, but in this case, let's say it is catalyzing personal reflection. All right, let's have a look then at this response. So this was the image that we obviously had to talk about, how it uses language forms and features to explore paradoxes, the human experience. Okay, so the use of 2 separate speech bubbles and bold characterized font draws the observer's eye to the text, which highlights the paradoxical extremities of excessive consumerism and apathetic complacency that humans display. So the key here with this first sentence is that it directly answers the question, because the question is how are language forms and features used. Anytime it's a how, you want to actually mention, and I might get my pen out here, every time it is how, there we go, every time it is how, you actually want to mention what the techniques are. Alright, what the techniques are. That's so important. And it says to explore paradoxes in human experience. So something you can see here doesn't tell you what paradox. A paradox can be anything, right? It's a paradox in the human experience. I might just use, okay. So paradox in the human experience. So here we're saying it highlights the paradoxical extremities of excessive consumerism and apathetic complacency that humans display. You have to make sure that you are being specific, that just, and like in essays, just repeating back text one utilizes forms and features to explore paradoxes in the human experience, that's not going to get you any marks. So you've got to make sure that you actually link to that you actually link back to the question. So how and what paradox are they asking us to explore? So let me go back. Alrighty, let me change color. So there we go. So the monotonous and bored expressions of the panel members contrast with the gravity of the message, suggesting the collective desensitization towards issues of global concerns due to individualism and greed. So this is a technique here, monotonous and bored expression of the panel members, and then this is the effect. It suggests that there's a collective desensitization towards the issue due to individualism and greed. So make sure you've got that technique and the effect. And a little, I guess, mnemonic that I like to use for it is quote, technique, effect, and link. So I think this is really good because it helps me remember that I have to actually have a quote, I have to have a technique, and then I really need to have an effect, and then link it back to the question. So I recommend, if you're struggling with that, try and use QTEL. Like it just sticks in your head. So that's the first piece of evidence. And if I just go back, let's have a look here. So these are the panel members. They're saying time is time to act, and then they say climate change is caused by two things: human activity and human interaction. Sorry, human inaction. All right. So that was the first piece of evidence. They're actually looking bored, which, you know, contrasts their message they're trying to show. So that's another technique. Contrast is also a technique. The symbol of the globe in the background subtly provokes the audience to consider the consequences of humanity's simultaneous action and inaction. Now, symbolism is also a technique. And this is the evidence. It's in the background, and then it provokes the audience. So that's the link part of it, to consider the consequences of humanity's simultaneous action and inaction. And that's the effect. And finally, the composer ultimately invites the audience to consider how this paradoxical behavior denies the self-evident truth. So this is a clear link back to the question, as I'm sure you can tell. So you've got to make sure that in your responses you're answering the question directly. You have obviously the suitable evidence, and you've got an audience impact statement at the end. The really good thing about section 1 of the common module paper is that they never, in the marking criteria, do they say this is the idea that students have to talk about, ever. What they say is, you know, it's basically they just repeat the question. So for example, the marking criteria here, for full 4 marks, it would say something like analyzes how language forms and features are used to explore paradoxes in the human experience. So they give you that liberty to have whatever interpretation you have, as long as you can actually back it up with the evidence. That's what they're looking for. Okay, so here is a general rule and a little, I guess, infographic to help you remember the different sort of elements of short answer questions. So firstly, there's a general rule that we like to follow here at TuteSmart, and that is that Q equals N minus 1. So Q here refers to the number of quotes, and N refers to the number of marks minus 1. So if it's a 4 marker, aim for 3 pieces of quotes, or evidence rather. If it's a 3 marker, aim for 2 pieces of evidence, and so on. Now, if you get a 5 marker plus, we would recommend writing a mini essay, so a mini essay with an introduction, about 1 to 2 sentences max, really, a body, another body paragraph, and then finally a conclusion, which is linking and synthesizing. So that's for the 5+ markers. For 2, 3, 4 markers, remember, if it's a 2 marker, you only need 1 piece of evidence. 3 marker, you need 2. 4 marker, you need 3. So synthesize sentence. So if there is a comparison question, a synthesis sentence is quite important because it basically will help you put the two ideas together. And visual text, so you can get a range of text in the unseen question. You can get, and I'm sure probably a lot of you are familiar with this from trials now, you can get prose fiction, you can get news, poetry, digital media, non-fiction, and with visual text you can get painting, photography, posters, ads, cartoons, and digital media. So, short answer question section is often overlooked, but remember, it is the same marks as your essays. Now, the key to getting better at short answer questions is to practice, right? Do timed exercises, get them marked. With English, best way to succeed is that the dot point there. Do your timed exercises and then get them marked and do them again and keep getting that feedback. Now, if there is a particular form that you feel uncomfortable analyzing, let's say like poetry is definitely up there, image maybe, you want to go back and review the relevant techniques so that you've got like a bank of techniques that you can use. Okay, let us move on to Module A then. So, Mom, please come pick me up. They're discussing how the relationship between text generates an ongoing cultural conversation. Another Facebook post. Here we are. Alrighty, so let's have a look. Here's a rubric. I'm not going to go through it. Hopefully you have a good understanding of it. If you don't, I would definitely recommend jotting down the keywords. But like with the common module rubric, your key sort of things that you have to do are in the first two texts, right? So you want to look at, rather how you want to study the text. So look at the ways in which comparative study can reveal resonances and dissonances between and within text. And then we want to consider the ways that a reimagining or reframing of an aspect of the text can mirror, align, and collide with the details of the other. So what's really important with this module is the idea of comparative study. You have to constantly and consistently compare the two texts. You can't just focus on one more than the other, and you can't focus on them isolated to one another. So remember, there are two key ideas that you want to take away from here. Firstly, why do we compare texts? And secondly, why do authors appropriate these texts? So, there are two essential questions that you will be answering in your thesis and essays for Module A, and this is because they're implicitly, like inherently, in all questions that NESA will ask about the unit, because that is what they want you to learn about the unit. So, what you want to make sure is that you are able to communicate to the marker that you understand the reason for comparative study. So, why do we compare text, and why do authors appropriate text? So you want to be able to communicate with the marker why we actually why both important, and how we can have a better understanding of ideas because we've actually compared them across the two texts. So to foreshadow this argument to the marker, your thesis would generally start with something like, through the textual conversation we may better understand. That's a good place to start. You can obviously have at the starting, for example, textual conversation between text A and text B allows audiences to, continue on from there. So this will help keep the comparative nature of the argument at the forefront. Remember, this module is all about comparison, so you can't, you can't sacrifice on that. Oh, where am I? Sorry guys, give me one sec. Alrighty, so context. Now, the key reason for why there are similarities and differences in your text is because they're written in different contexts, right? And a high achieving Module 8 essay will attach context to your arguments, like so it will attach context to its arguments, and consider the significance of context in every piece of evidence. So you cannot sacrifice on context. So remember, not every contextual moment has to be long and drawn out. You can use the key phrases to link back. For example, this is clearly influenced by her feminist leanings, or confronting an audience defined by their belief in the divine right of kings. So that will go a long way. There's the key phrases. You're not actually going to, let's say, what is the divine right of kings? And how did Queen Elizabeth's reign sort of promote that, whatever. We're not doing that. You just want to use that contextual the contextual idea in your text to show that you understand where it's coming from. So you may sometimes have heard this referred to as paired evidence. Well, yes, you want to have evidence that lines up. It's not enough to say that composer 1 does this, composer 2 does this. They show the same thing. So what that means is that your goal is to actually tease out the nuances in between texts. Not tell us that they tell the same story, because they don't. There are differences, and that's because of the context. That's because of the values and the purpose of the different composers. So even if they ultimately have the same argument, the main part is, how do they get to that argument? What sort of leanings do they have? So let's have a look. Now, when it comes to contextual knowledge, try to have a mix of the following. Your essay will stand out. Make sure you've got political, social, personal, and literary context. And literary context is just looking at how other texts have influenced the prescribed piece. Okay, so here's the rubric. Nestle's expectation for this unit. Let's have a look what they are. Your paragraphs will probably end up being a bit thick, and that's because there is so much to include. And so to perfect this unit, you need to write a whole essay. Module A is unlike any unit in the HSC exam in the curriculum, and that's because you're doing so much, you're juggling so much. You want to have the balanced discussion of the two texts. You want to include context and the actual normal analysis. So the analysis of the text cannot be missing, but then you're going one step further and looking at how those ideas differ or resonate. So the best way to work around this is to work with integrated paragraphs. Now, you can write non-integrated paragraphs, totally up to you, but we recommend integrated paragraphs because this really helps with the comparisons between the two texts, right? And it is centered on a shared idea rather than a text per paragraph. So it showcases that you can look at a key idea and how it's explored in both texts, and that is achieving the purpose of Module A. So here we are. Here's an integrated versus a non-integrated structure. So a non-integrated structure will basically have like two themes, right, shared across the two texts, but in the first body paragraph it will only talk about text 1, then next paragraph text B, then text 1 again, and then text B or text 2. So it's straightforward. It kind of resembles a normal essay. However, the thing is that it really does not help with giving equal weight to it really does not help with the comparison aspect of the text of the module. So remember, we want to talk about the comparison, and we want to talk about why are we actually studying these texts. And so what happens is, when you just sort of do the when you just use this method, the comparison part is concentrated in the even paragraphs. It's concentrated in 2 and 4. So that basically means that there's not much comparison, and these two paragraphs you have to do more comparison here than in these first two paragraphs. So in the first paragraph and the third paragraph. So that's why we recommend an integrated structure. So within our integrated structure, we've got 3 themes, and for each theme you go through both the texts. So both the texts for each of the themes. And this is a bit more difficult, hence it's considered a bit more sophisticated. And the main advantage is that it really facilitates that comparative study, and it's more concise as well. But what you need to be vigilant of is that you are giving equal weight to both texts. You can't sort of talk about one more than the other. Alright, where is my cursor? Here we go. Okay, so best structure of an integrated paragraph is even more nuanced. Here we are. So within an integrated paragraph, you start off with your point. Now, that has to have both conceptual and links to the thesis. So what that means is it's obviously talking about an idea in the text, or like, something that's portrayed in the text. It's conceptual, but it has to link back to the thesis. That's so important. I've definitely seen some really good essays, that are really good in terms of analysis, and writing. However, they tend to let down when it comes to having like tight topic sentences and also tight thesis. So here we can see that we've got conceptual and links to the thesis. The first quote from the prescribed text includes analysis and contextual justification, and then we've got a second quote from the same concept but in the second text. So it's basically going text 1, text 2, text 3, sorry, text 1 again, text 2, second text, and then text 3, sorry, text 1, where you come back to the original text and you revise. So have a look at this. So first text with the same idea for the third quote, return and revise the meaning of the parent text. So you're essentially, at the end of the textual conversation, you're looking at, has your meaning of the two texts been enhanced by looking at them comparatively? Okay, so let's have a look now. Alright, remember, this reflects the conversation aspect of the module. Markers can see that you're going back and forth. You are looking at how the two texts converse with one another. Okay, so here we've got an example for you. This is an integrated paragraph from William Shakespeare's The Tempest and Margaret Atwood's Haxie. So indeed, by investigating the use of perspectives common to society, a reader can come to greater understanding of the way in which texts challenge rigid social hierarchies present in society, promoting the audience to move beyond them. Rather than letting himself be cinched by his Tudor patrons, Shakespeare subverts the common perspectives on gender subservience through Ferdinand's use of antithesis in "The mistress which I serve quickens what's dead, and makes my labourers pleasures," suggesting a positive side to serving one's love, regardless of gender roles. He thus presents an alternative to Elizabethan times, commenting on the possibility to change in tradition, as exemplified through the isolated location of the island. So here we can see we've got our two main ideas here that looks at how essentially within this integrated paragraph we're looking at how Shakespeare starts off and provides us a certain perspective on the textual conversation, and then we see Haxie join this conversation and actually give us a different to actually portray some different ideas that resonate with her 21st century audience. Alrighty, and so another thing you can see here is the way in which we talk about the Shakespeare subverts the common perspective, and an alternative to Elizabethan times, commenting on the possibility to change in tradition. Okay, so we continue on from there. That was Shakespeare. Now we continue on with Haxie. Atwood, however, expresses this in a more explicit way, portraying the ghost of Miranda as scolding, caring when Felix was sick, and doing Felix's bidding, when Atwood's feminist perspective is taken into account. So that's her context. We can read that the metaphysical nature of this character represents a literal fading of such gender perspectives, the older Felix clinging to such notions in spite of the common perspective of in spite of the common perspective of gender, of fluid gender roles. Atwood seems to be prompting simply recontextualizing the bard. Continuing to reshape her parent text, Atwood's use of omniscient narrator critiques notions of male grandeur, revealing how fallen, how deflated, how reduced Felix has become, emphasizing the rule of three. Thus, The audience gains deeper insight into the common perspective of Felix himself, with sarcastic commentary on the zeitgeist of modern white man, revealing that his faults are not due to political correctness gone way out of control. And now we can see how within both the texts we could, like, there was huge focus on the context and the purpose of the two authors. And then with Atwood, we actually compare her to Shakespeare. We look at how she expresses the idea in a more expressive way, how she's prompting and recontextualizing the bard, and how she's continuing to reshape Shakespeare. Okay, and now we've gone through that, and now we bring Shakespeare back. So through this critical representation, we may glean better insight into Shakespeare's radical portrayal of Prospero, revealing an inherent contrast with his construction as an imperfect member of the monarchy. His rhetorical question, "Shall not myself be kindlier moved than thou art?" thus firmly reflects Shakespeare's subversion of the great chain of beings, as he portrays Prospero faltering on questions of morality and questioning the commonly held perspective of the divine right to control empires as a superior figure. Therefore, by comparing Atwood's and Shakespeare's critiquing of common social perspectives, we can gain better insight into how subversive purposes are readapted across time. And that is that comment on the value of comparative study. So I hope that helped you sort of gain a good idea of, you know, that back and forth that's supposed to happen in your paragraphs. And they're obviously long, they're, you know, across 3 slides, but yeah, the purpose is to show you that that it's really important to have that structure going back and forth, making sure that you're actually commenting on the idea of the comparative study. So alright, here we are, Module B. So before we go ahead, take some time to jot down any questions. We're doing really well, and now we've gone through 2 modules in an hour, and this next hour we are going to look at Module B and Module C. Let's start off with the meme here. The HSC marker reading my train wreck off an essay that doesn't answer the questions at all. This makes no sense. Me having used the word thus 7 times. Well, it would if you were smarter. Wow, can't quite say that back to marker. However, you can see the key, yeah, with all our essays, it's those little things. And there's so many things that are actually you know, common across all the essays. So it's really important that you focus on that. So here's a module, here's a syllabus. I'm not going to go through it. I will just highlight a couple of things though, because I'm going to use my highlighter tool and try to highlight nicely. Not sure how it's going to turn out, but we can try. Oh, that's straight. Oh no, there we go, kind of got there. Okay, that one was better. There we are. Oh no. Alright, here we go. So critical study of literature, the key word for this is textual integrity. You are looking at the construction of a text, and you're commenting and critiquing that instruction. So you're kind of like a critic who's critiquing the construction of the text, who's critiquing the writer. And through that critique, you have to sort of decide and discuss whether or not your text has textual integrity. Now, one little disclaimer for you is that because all the texts that we study here in English Advanced, they're all from, you know, written by great authors, especially in Module B. You've got Jane Austen, you've got Charles Dickens, you have T.S. Eliot, you've got Henrik Ibsen, you've got all of these amazing writers. So what it means is that more than likely your text has textual integrity. Your text has textual integrity basically, but you have to show in your essays how it does that. You need to critique on that. So let's have a look. Alrighty, so there are 3 key ideas here. The first one is looking at language, form, and ideas. The second thing you want to look at is the audience reception of the text. And by audience reception, we mean how did the contextual and contemporary audiences receive the text, and finally, what is the contemporary value of the text? Why are we still studying it? So let's have a look now. Alrighty. Okay, I can feel my voice starting to just, go off a bit now, so bear with me. Hopefully still nice and clear. So, textual integrity. Let's have a look at how we can break down a question. So when it comes to an exam question, the first step is to ask yourself, where is textual integrity in the question? The second step is to consider what aspects of textual integrity are actually missing from the question. And then the third step is to look at, what does this tell us about the effectiveness of the text? The first two are our keywords, and then the last step is our interpretation about the effectiveness of the text. Okay, so here is a little cheat sheet for us, so we can structure our essays or our intro, a thesis, sort of like this, where the effective depiction of whatever the question is, in whatever your text is enabled by the masterful control over language, form, and ideas. In studying the synthesis of these facets of the text, we may better understand the insight it provides into its in both its original context and our contemporary times. Or something a bit different, texts that explore the issue as a universal idea have the potential to transcend their context, remaining relevant to us as contemporary audiences. Examining the intersection of form, language, and ideas in the text serves to highlight this, prompting the audiences to whatever the link to the question is. So what you can see here is that the key, line here, and let me get a new color. Let me get green. Hopefully you can still see through that. The key line is this. The way in which we measure textual integrity is that we say textual integrity is a unity of language, form, and concepts. And you can see here that within both, you want to make clear the importance of textual integrity and what textual integrity is from the very beginning. That's really, really important. So let's have a look. Now, remember, the last step of a question dissection involves an argument or an opinion, and that's the creative. Sorry about that. Let's get an eraser, shall we, and take that off, and let me have a go again. Okay, it's critical study, so good enough, I guess. There you go, straighten it out. Alright, cool. That's good. Okay, so essentially, remember with module B, you're looking at critical study. You are not just doing a closed study of the text, you're critical, you're actually evaluating the text, you're being picky, you are, looking at what is the text doing right. If it's doing anything wrong, you're a critic yourself. So there are a few levels on which you can do this analysis, but to begin, ask yourself these 3 questions, and surely by now you already have that understanding of the text, you already have your critique on the text, what is it doing? But think about these 3 questions if you don't have that established yet. Firstly, what is the overall meaning of the text? Secondly, how is that meaning communicated? And thirdly, what does that meaning have value? Is there anything that we as readers can take away from that? So let's have a look. And yes, make sure that you read your text at least before. Hopefully you should have all done that by now. So this is where having like a first glance at your work can really help. Consider, do you like your text? Why not? What particular ideas actually hook you into the text? Does the text argue with its audiences? Does it and you can also then debate with others and read your critics to solidify that. So there are basically 4 levels of 4 levels of analysis when it comes to module B. The first one is the bare minimum. This is level 1. This is where you're just identifying some techniques and you're discussing the macro structure of the text. It's bare minimum. There's not a lot going on. Second, the second part is when you're getting, so second level is when you're getting a little bit more critical. You're looking at some complex techniques, and remember your text will have complex techniques. So you're looking at complex techniques, and then you're also engaging with form and language, and that's really, really important, engaging with form and language. Then a band 6 worthy essay is when you actually are also looking at metatextual techniques. So metatext is essentially when a text, for example, discusses the power of literature, or it's got a text inside a text. It's basically when a text is aware of its literary nature, or you're engaging with or if you're talking about how your text engages with innovative features of the text. Or if you engage with how your text utilizes innovative features. And finally, if you are integrating critics. So the key, so in the syllabus, we can see that they really want you to integrate critics into your essay. So you're going to make sure that you do that. So that's pretty important. And then finally, the fourth level, where you kind of go beyond that band 6 level, is when you are actually interpreting. So it's your personal interpretation of the text. So for example, what did you take away from the text? And that's really important. Markers are looking forward to read your personal interpretation. They want to know what you thought about the text. Okay, so here is an application of the exam. So let's go through this. Essentially, we've got this exam plan. We're gonna go through this, and so let's just have a look. So the degradation of actually, I might just sort of go through it this way. Okay, here we are. So, the degradation of morality in the modern world allows Eliot to indict universal truths and challenge the grand narratives of religious institutions. Such moral corruption is embodied in the sordid landscape of his poetry, most strikingly in Rhapsody. There's our evidence. Eliot's haunting use of skeletal imagery becomes implicitly symbolic, connecting the vividly degenerate landscape with the interiority of the individual, thus affirming their dislocation from genuine morality. Moreover, Eliot confronts the comforting fiction of religion as a paragon of morality, highlighting the gulf that exists between its rituals and authentic virtue. Such a paradox is found in the bodies of the titular hollow men, simultaneously hollow and stuffed, with the religious doctrines relegated to the disdainful imagery. That's basic technique. So multiple techniques, it's the basics. It's back to level 1. Alrighty. So there's a quote. In doing so, Eliot sows doubt into his audience's faith in religious institutions and asserts its moral emptiness. Indeed, literary critic Robert Crawford writes that the poem epitomizes the degradation of the essential ritual to highlight the insufficiencies of moral truth disseminated by religion. This is exemplified by the morbid subversion of the fertility dance that is performed by the hollow men. Here we go around the prickly pear, prickly pear, prickly pear. Deploying discomforting tactile imagery, Eliot reiterates the dislocation of religious ritual from moral intentions. Furthermore, the asinine rhyme and repetition creates a childish tone. So that's again basic technique. We've got multiple techniques here. We've got 2 here, rendering the performance of religion infantile and futile. In turn, Eliot scathingly critiques those who cling to comfortable fictions presented by religious institutions and challenges his audience to question the universal truth. So let's have a look. That's the first thing. Now, second level of analysis is discussing more complex technique, haunting use of skeletal imagery, which becomes implicitly symbolic, connecting the vividly degenerate landscape with the inferiority of the individual. So we've got skeletal imagery and the fact that it's symbolic. And then we also see such a paradox is found in the bodies of the titular hollow men. So that's level 2. Level 3 is now we are going to that band 6 level. So that we do by integrating a critic. And we also see, so by the morbid subversion of the fertility dance performed by the Hollow Men. So subversion of the romantic sort of traditions, subversion of romantic traditions in general is a big modernist form technique. And what we see here is that it's an innovative feature that Eliot uses. Finally, our personal interpretation. So in the topic sentence, we see Eliot, so modern world allows Eliot to induct universal truths and challenge grand narratives of religious institutions. And we end with, he critiques those who cling to comfortable fictions presented by religious institutions and challenges his audience to question the universal truth. Okay, so though we can see that the uniqueness of Module B can mean that you write any number of arguments, here is a good structure to implement. So you have your thesis, and remember, you want to link back to form, language, and ideas. So the unity of form, language, and ideas is textual integrity. And textual integrity is also measured by how a text links to its contemporary and contextual audiences. So how form, language, and ideas work together to make a text that stretches across time, this will be specified by the question. Paragraph 1, you focus on one key idea in the text, and then you want to have 2 quotes that relate to contextual audience and 2 quotes that relate to contemporary audience. And through this, you can sort of link, achieve the textual integrity and link to 2. Then paragraph 2, same thing. Paragraph 3, pretty much the same thing. So in each paragraph, remember that 2 quotes should generally address form. Form is a key to Module B. So you need to make sure that you're not sacrificing on form. So you have form specific, you've got like form specific ideas and form specific evidence as well, and obviously language techniques too. Okay, look at us go, Module C. So I'll give you a second to jot down any questions if you've got any. I know we're going through this pretty nice and quick, which is good. But if you have any questions, let me know. And I'm hoping that the exemplars are helping you I think they're a nice way to sort of understand where we kind of want to get to in terms of the analysis. And they're written by past tutors here at CheatSmart, so they're pretty high level, pretty good, as I'm sure you can tell. So use it as an exemplar to help you understand all the different parts that you want to have within your essays. So here we are. Literally none of my story ideas come with a plot ever, without fail. It's always just an aesthetic, like 2.5 characters, some very, very vivid settings, and a weird concept. Never plot, not even an inkling of a plot. My brain tosses me this cool stuff, and it's like, well, I'll be back in 4 to 5 business months. So yeah, we obviously want to have a plot for our Module C, and the reason that we want to have a plot is because we don't have 4 to 5 months to write a novel. We are writing for 40 minutes in the HSC paper, so you've got to make sure that essentially you use that really well, that you have a plot, that you have a strong storyline, that you are, that you're sort of portraying through your text. So we'll leave that to you, but essentially this module is all about now putting everything together. So all that you've learned from analyzing your text from Common Mod, Mod A, and Mod B, and also you have texts like set out for this module as well. So your prescribed text for Module C. So it's now looking at all that you've learned and implementing that to create your own piece of writing that has a purpose. And then you may also be asked to evaluate that writing, and that's where a reflection comes in. A reflection is important. So let's have a look. The key idea is that why do you think your texts are good, right? Take those good parts and put them in your own story. So characters, ideas, narrative conventions, techniques, and audience impact. And what that means is that essentially from the two prescribed texts that you are studying, you will draw on technical and conceptual features of the prescribed text. So that means looking at techniques, but also looking at ideas and concepts in the piece. So how does your prescribed text serve as a technical model? You can look at form, language techniques, style, and voice. When it comes to form, you can look at the structure of the writing, the perspective, the linearity. Language techniques, the language techniques that are being used in the text, allusion, intertextuality, imagery, choose your pick. And then finally, style and voice. For example, how does the writer sound? And you can take that style of writing and that tone of voice as well. So make sure that you are looking at your text through both a technical and a thematic lens. So, how to actually incorporate technical features? There are two ways in which you can do that. The first way is that you can imitate the technical features from your prescribed text. So you can have the same technique and the same purpose. But because you're writing a different piece of writing and you're writing for a different purpose to a different question, more than likely you won't have the same purpose. So instead, more than likely you'll be transforming. So you can transform by having the same technique and a new purpose, or you can actually also experiment with the technique. You also have the liberty to do that. So, your pieces should not be a carbon copy of the concepts in your prescribed text. That is really, really important. You have to transform their context. So how do we actually do that? How do we transform these concepts? Let's have a look. So, you can expand on a niche theme or aspect of the text. You can write a character with a different identity. You can reconceptualize the story by putting the plot in a new setting. You can also argue against the text as well. Whichever text it is, and you don't agree with it, you can argue against it. And then finally, you can update to contextual value. So if if your text was one of the older texts, you can definitely update that to a modern day text. So you can see how some of these will be best suited to different sort of forms of writing. Like if you want to argue against the text, you can do that via characterization, and your ideas in a creative, or you can do it in through a discursive, for example. But that is up to you. So, I want us to have a look at this. So, just read this part with me first and don't worry about the other side. So, here we go. When Elle first visited, she could hardly pin her tapping toes down. The opening of the Cotton Club had spread by word of mouth. Elle was looking forward to a night of entertainment. She would hold giggle water in one hand and conduct ardently with other. She would be mesmerized by bob-headed chorus girls with grinning teeth like subtle chipped keys and dresses kissing thighs. She would have fit right in, but she had quickly been disappointed. Elle was dismissed by security at a single glance before she had the chance to introduce herself. Her confusion was met with judging eyes, and the bouncer spelled it out for her. This is a whites club only. She was the stark contrast. So you can see with this writing, there are so many things, but they're working well so together. The first thing that we need to do in our piece of writing is that we need to understand the economy of words. Every word should have a purpose. Here, each sentence, each word had a purpose. We could see how that sentence here, she would fit right in, how that is used so that it can contrast with the fact that she was a stark contrast. How here we can see that, for example, she was looking forward to a night of entertainment. She would be mesmerized, right? However, that is completely contrasted with the ending. It also balances aspects of fictional writing. So we see the characterizations that Elle was looking forward to a night of entertainment. So we can see Elle is someone who is young, who is excited who's probably young rather, excited to go out, have a fun night. And so that's characterization. Setting, we're told it's Cotton Club, We don't know what exactly, it looks like, whatever, but we know it's a club, it's new, and it's exciting, right? It's a believable and well-paced narrative. So one of the key things that we always have to remember with our pieces in module C is that we are not like, don't make it fast paced. Like, don't try to include like 3 scenes in the 40 minutes. You only have 40 minutes of writing. So I would say max 2 scenes. Like, that's really, really important. So don't try to get like, always remember quality over quantity. You don't want to have too much in and then having your story like really fast paced, really awkward for the reader to read. Rather, you want to have quality. You want to have quality writing, even if it's just, one scene, but we obviously get somewhere by the end of the piece. That is what that matters. And here, we were like, it was paced well. We are introduced to her internal thought, we're introduced to how she's excited, and then she reaches there and she's dismissed, right? And that's those 2 scenes, and it's working perfectly. It's not like she heard about it first, then she's thinking about it, then she goes there, then she goes there, she's dismissed, and then she thinks about it and goes back home. Like, that will not have worked. So even if this piece was to continue, it would continue within that, like, it would follow on from where, the bouncer said it's a whites club only. Being judicious about dialogue, really, really important. Don't overdo dialogue. Be judicious about it. Use it where it's going to have an impact. And here we could see that one sentence, this is a whites club only, that has a very, it definitely sort of juxtaposes the earlier tone of the writing, and it immediately creates a very contradictory space as well. So there has to be research behind it, and the intention and purpose is subtly expressed. So here we can see that the intention is to showcase to some extent how this main character, Elle, is essentially subject to racism. She's subject to discrimination, and as a result, and it sort of showcases her experiences as an African American individual who is, discriminated against, who can't go to the same settings as white people can. Alrighty, so let's have a look at this piece. The oral pleasure of words is the most gratifying aspect of language, for language is brought to a new form of existence when it is experienced and felt. I share a sentiment with American essayist Alfred Korn in that I too view words as a textile. Visual admiration of the printed linen would limit its capacity to evoke meaning. There are seams and fabric that are to be caressed, and it is with a fluttering tongue that this is achieved best with words, for it reaches the ears of an audience and from then travels to the soul. I appreciate great craftsmanship when my hands marvel at how another person has managed to create such a work with theirs, as I become equally enraptured by words when I hear the tonality, the way another person has managed to create such a conviction with strung together words. They become dimensional, edges are trailed with traveling expressions, resonating in space and cutting at corners when the syllables cease. I celebrate the tapestry. When I first discovered the power of sound, everything had been filled with music. I was suddenly a conductor of the ordinary. My symphony, an essay on how to live. I now have discovered how words can whisper in start, but they collide in finality, reminding me that even in endings, nothing is ever quiet. So we can see with this essay, there's a lot going on. It's a discursive piece, as I'm sure you could tell. It's firstly, it has a direction, right? It has a direction. It's moving us. The writing is obviously very compelling, and there's a personal touch to it. When I first discovered the power of sound. So you always want to write, one of the key tips when it comes to writing that we, for example, that I give to my class, that we talk about in class, is that write what you know. write things that you're comfortable writing about. So make sure you write what you know. Now this piece also, it's written appropriately, so it has both formal and informal elements. So you could see that first sentence was very formal, and then we had an informal tone of I2V words. So it definitely took that shift from, you know, a more I won't say cold, but a more preserved sort of starting, and then it kind of weaved in the reader and brought out the narrator. It has research and evidence, so it's research well, and it's clearly using evidence, as seen in the reference to essayist Alfred Korn. And the intention and purpose is subtly clear. So the intention of language, you know, being such a powerful tool, is certainly clear. The power of music and sound is clear as well. So we can see it's, you know, about appreciating those little things. So when it comes to reflection in your exams, now, as we know, Nessa wants you to work on your reflection, write a reflection, and this is an opportunity to sell your piece to the marker. That's the key. Think of it as a way to sell your piece to the marker. Use high modality language. That's so important. Use high modality language. And make sure, like, you're not sort of like looking down at your work. You want to say, okay, this is what I did and this is why I did it. The key thing with a reflection is that the bulk of your marks are coming from your it's coming from your exploration, or rather your analysis of your own writing. You know, you're saying, this is the quote, this is the technique I used to create this specific effect, and this is what I wanted to show to my audiences. A purpose in Module C writing is so important. It's so important. You always want to have a purpose to link back to, and that purpose will be determined by that purpose has to be valid. So let's say your purpose can't just be, you know, writing for the sake of the HSC. The purpose will be determined by your piece, by the ideas you're sharing. So with both the pieces we read, there was a purpose behind it. Like, you wanted to show us something, and that's what you have to do as well. So make sure you have a purpose that you always link back to in your reflection. And when it comes to things you want to include, remember the salient language forms and features of your writing. You have to link back to the prescribed text. So in your introduction, you'll have to say, my text uses these techniques, or these technical features and these thematic features to convey this specific idea, inspired or influenced by this text, your prescribed text, and the author. So also remember, especially when it's a stimulus, especially when you've given a stimulus, or you're asked to include the stimulus as a central idea, let's say, you have to make sure that you are incorporating that you're, remember, always interpret the stimulus figuratively. Do not interpret it literally, right? So always interpret it figuratively. And so in your reflection, you want to talk about how you've incorporated the piece. What have you tried to show through that? And let's avoid being like that. I know, and I've actually seen this, like, people love, like, not love, but I've definitely seen students like definitely Mod A better, like feeling more happy with the Mod A essays. Mod B's there, they're trying to fix it, and Mod C's like, where do I go with this? So make sure you're giving them equal, you're giving them good focus, you're focusing on all of them, but obviously, give the part, like the module which you feel least comfortable with more time. Make sure you feel comfortable and confident equally in all the modules. Okay, so here we are. This is application and exams. This is going to show you the difference between just identifying techniques in a reflection versus assessing and justifying techniques in a reflection. So identifying is just saying, and this is linking back to the piece that we looked at first. So the jungle nocturne is a creative response that uses the provided stimulus, the greatest change coming from a change in thought, as an ending. The protagonist of my short story is narrated from the perspective of Elle, an African-American woman who has a change in her views. I reveal this change from reading Kate Chopin's novel, The Awakening, 1899. So this is just identifying. This is very basic. Let's have a look at what you want to do. You want to assess what you have done. You want to justify the steps that you've taken. And remember, in your introduction, you want to mention your prescribed text. There we are. You don't have to have a name for your text. You could just say my text or my short story or my discursive piece, whatever you want. But or if you want a name, you can have a name. For sure, you can have a name. So let's have a look here at assessing and justifying. So the Jungle Nocturne is a creative response that successfully illustrates how, at the end of the day, the greatest change comes from a change in thought. So key here, sell your work successfully. Okay. Set during the Harlem Renaissance, my short stories narrated from the perspective of Elle, an African American woman who experiences a significant shift in her views. So give a bit of context, like show the market that you've planned it out, that you've thought about the setting, you've thought about the context, you've thought about the purpose, that you've researched, right? Supporting my endeavors in revealing this change and its impact on the protagonist are salient language forms and features. That is so important. Greatly influenced from Kate Chopin's novel, The Awakening. So it's so important that you link back to how you use your prescribed text as a as a inspiration for your own writing. So I think one thing I'll say is, with creative writing, same thing with the essays. I recommend not to memorize pieces. I recommend to know your pieces really well, or sort of have ideas that you're comfortable writing with, and then to sort of answer the question. But at the same time, I think because I definitely know people who've done really, really well who have memorized their creatives. And that is because, so even if you memorize it, make sure that it fits the question. So there's a bit of leniency there, I think, with Module C, but definitely not with Module A, B, or Common Mod. Like, do not memorize essays. Creative writing is still okay, because creative writing, like, you can change things. You can, like, or rather discursive writing too, like, Module C writing in general, you have more liberty. You have more freedom to be creative. With essays, you don't, right? The question, and with Module C, the questions are generally a lot more broader. They give you more room for interpretation, creative, and being creative. Essay questions don't. So 100% recommend never ever to memorize an essay, but I think it can still work for a creative writing. But my personal tip, like the way I did it, was just to, like, have a concept that I was really comfortable writing with, and it's kind of like memorizing, but I didn't like memorize the words and stuff, obviously. I just knew the idea I liked, and then I wrote about that idea, so it's kind of memorizing in a way. But best thing is do lots and lots of practice questions beforehand, so you know exactly where you're going with it. Essays, no chance of memorizing, never ever recommend it. Always try and answer the question. Always, like, know your quotes, know your analysis, know your ideas, but then answer the question on the day, the given question. So, application in the exam for reflection. Just got a bit sidetracked there. Definitely one of my really, like, key points I always mention every lecture, every class even, is that don't memorize essays, and I tend to go off on a little tangent about that. So maybe I'll come back to it, because I do have, like, a tips page to go through, but let's have a look at application in the exam. So with your reflection, here's a little structure for you when it comes to structuring your reflection. Have a topic sentence that answers the question. The first paragraph, analyze at least 2 quotes from your own piece, and then make sure you reference the effect on the reader. Second paragraph, same thing, at least 2 quotes from your own piece and reference the reader. And also remember to have quotes for the techniques that you're using from your prescribed text as well, so in each paragraph. So you're essentially aiming for about 3 quotes per paragraph. 2 are going to be your own, and 1 is going to be from the prescribed text. Same thing here. Oh, I actually can write okay with this. I just clearly can't seem to draw straight lines with the highlighter. Alrighty, so that's my tip there, and then conclusion and obviously your introduction. Now, introduction, do not forget to mention your prescribed text. Use words like my text effectively does this, does this to a great extent, stuff like that. Sell your work to us and make sure that there's a purpose. The most important thing in a reflection is your purpose. You want to have a purpose, be able to communicate something to the audience. Oh, look at that. I'm actually pretty happy with how that's turning out. Will I be able to get the line in? Yes. Good. All right, so purpose is a key here. Alrighty. So, study skills. Now, I kind of want to in these next sort of last 20-ish minutes, I kind of want to go through this and focus on some study skills. Now, if you have any questions, please ask. Remember, no question's a silly question. I'm sure, whatever you're thinking, other people are thinking that too. Like, we are all going through this collective experience together. So please don't be afraid to ask questions. Like I said, no question's a silly question. I'll be live answering. One thing that I should have mentioned earlier is if I, for example, miss your question because, there's so many, especially at the beginning when there's lots of questions coming up, just let me know and pop the question up again and I'll go through this. But yeah, I'll probably write that in the chat by now. We may have already written that in the chat by now, actually. This is a bit sort of meta text, isn't it? Because I'm talking about the act of writing while I'm talking. It's cool. But yeah, so alrighty, let's have a go at study techniques. So you're getting really close. So you want to make sure that you feel comfortable with everything, that you are looking forward to these exams and finishing them off, and you feel comfortable with all that you have to do, so you will survive, and again, don't mean that in a patronizing way. I mean that in more so you got this, you're gonna get this, and you're gonna be so happy once it's over, and then you can have your summer of holidays. I just keep thinking of that Shawn Mendes song, Summer of Love. I don't know why. It's just summer. But anyways, yeah, you'll have a good summer, a good summer after this. So yeah, remember, in these next couple of days, you still have time to acknowledge key areas for improvement and to spend some, solid time fixing them up, using your study time to brush up on your exam skills, and make sure that you are implementing all the feedback that you got from trials, that you have pinpointed and worked on the feedback from trials. That's why trials are really important. So 3 things that I've sort of noticed as a tutor and a student generally include that. Firstly, studying ineffectively, and that's definitely more as a student than as a tutor, but definitely, yeah, studying ineffectively. So what you want to do is make sure that you're studying in a way that works for you. Everyone is different, everyone studies differently, everyone works differently, so you are under no obligation to study a certain way. Study in a way that works for you. So that's the first thing. Secondly, poor time management in exams. This is, again, this probably both as a tutor and a student, actually. I was definitely writing overtime. I'd always go a bit over time, so I definitely had to work a lot on that as a student. Yeah, so that one's, I think what's really important, I guess, when it comes to time management is that I think is that obviously you want to get everything in, but remember, quality over quantity. And one thing that you really want to make sure is that with band 6, in the band 6 marking criteria, one of the key things, points there are that you've written a sustained essay, that the essay is sustained. It's a sustained response. Sustained means finished. And if you don't have a conclusion, it's not counted as it is not counted as sustained. So that means even if you just get in a 1-line conclusion, get that line in. Even if that means you have to you're writing the last line of the paragraph. Sorry. If you're writing the last line of the paragraph and you notice you're running out of time, the invigilator is going to say papers down any minute or whatever, and time's running out. Get in that last sentence, that conclusion. Don't worry about finishing the paragraph off if it's the last sentence. Just get in the conclusion, get in the one line conclusion first, and then go back if you've got more time to finish and finish off. So important to do that. And when it comes to practicing for time management, yeah, look, always quality over quantity. Think about that. Try and be disciplined and stick to your quotes and your analysis. Like, don't try and override. Also, another good way to practice is to practice, it's to sort of, this is a technique that I think it can work. It may not work. You can try it out. It works sometimes. It kind of worked for me, but it's still like practice with 10% less time than you have. So if you're gonna have 40 minutes for an essay, try and practice for 36 minutes, or try and write an essay in 38 minutes. And that's that way, if you're like consistently doing that, you know that on the day you'll be fine with the timing, or rather on the day you have a bit of buffer time in case you do have to, you know, like in case it takes you a bit longer than expected. Also remember, on the day you have that adrenaline rush. You'll feel like you want to finish everything off, so it will make you work faster, it will make you work harder. But I think it's good to practice, like, you know, giving yourself 2 minutes less, so that if you're consistently writing within 38 minutes, you know that you'll have that 2-minute buffer time if you need it. Let's say you took 2 minutes to plan, and then you can still write in 30 minutes, you'll be done in the 40 minutes. And lack of confidence and clarity in exams. So hopefully today really helped you, especially with the essays. Like, it have really helped you understand all the different elements you want to have. And obviously with Mod C as well, all the different elements you want to have for each module. Best way to gain confidence and gain clarity is to do practice exams. Unfortunately, it is like the key way to do it. I wish I could tell you something different, something cool that you haven't heard before, but I can't. That's the best way to go when it comes to improving in English. So, studying not working for you, it's not your fault. We are all different, and if you sort of keep sticking to the same study habit that's not working for you, you're going to find yourself, not being motivated, or finding yourself, annoyed at yourself that why isn't it working for me? And I say that from experience, because I remember what worked for everyone else generally never worked for me. Like, I know people are big on timetables, and big on, like, yes, sticking to like that solid regime. I tried it, and it worked if I followed everything perfectly down to a T. But if there was any day that I missed something, or I started 5 minutes late, that would just completely throw me off. Like, I would just abandon the whole timetable that day, because I'm like, I was 5 minutes late, I can't go on. So, I sort of learned that just trying to sort of discipline myself in that, and just like keep going back to that, wasn't working because of, time constraint and stuff. So instead, I switched to like doing to-do lists. Worked a lot better for me, gave me that flexibility. So try and make sure you find what works for you, and I'm hoping by now you already feel pretty confident with that. But even if there's some things that don't be afraid to try something new. Don't be afraid to like don't just keep sticking with the same methods if they're not working. And this is obviously really important for next year, for if you're going ahead and continuing with tertiary education. It can be really helpful. So most people generally tend to learn in a passive way. Well, the way we are taught to study really is through note taking. It's a passive way of study. That's the way we're taught. Make notes, make notes, make notes. Not the best way to study, because you sit there writing those notes down, and in the next minute it's like in I don't know, I can't even say in through one eye, out through the other. No, but it's like in through one part of your brain and straight out through the other. So I recommend doing considering active study. So but if note taking does work for you, if it is good for you, if it's helping you, if it's worked for you so far, continue using it. There's no need to change just because I said so. Alright, so there's no need to change. But if it's not working for you, try something else. There are 7 different learning styles. So how can one work for everyone? Everyone. So sometimes notes can feel like a crutch, right? And that's because they can sometimes waste precious time. So don't just focus on like rewriting your notes to study, start applying that content. So you can do that firstly. Now, firstly, before we talk about that, there are different types of, like, everyone's a different type of learner. You can be a visual learner. So you learn best when information is presented spatially, right? And making diagrams, making maps, and flow diagrams. That can help a lot with subjects like biology and PDHP and even chem. Making flow diagrams can really help. Color coding can also help. And visual visual learning is really good if you have good visual memory. Oral is when you hate reading, so you thrive in a lecture-based discussion groups. This is where um, studying with music is a no-go for you, for example, and you learn more by sort of discussing with others, hearing, like saying it out loud. Verbal is a mix of the first two. You enjoy writing and reading. Vocabulary is really good. You frequently use mnemonics and acronyms, and you love teaching others. And teaching others is one of the best ways to learn. And even if you're not actually teaching someone else and there's no one in front of you, maybe put on turn on your camera, put on a video, and pretend you're teaching someone, and that can really help. That's something that definitely saved me with biology and PDHPE, was like pretending I was teaching others, like going through the content, explaining it. Then we've got, if you are a physical learner, you prefer hands-on learning, prac over theory, for example. Logical learner, so you like to make connections and group information together. Or if you're a social learner, if you'd like to study collaboratively in groups. Yeah, don't be afraid to don't be afraid to sort of learn in what is the best way for you, for whatever learner you are. You don't have to just resort to note taking. So for English, this means things like practice essays, timed and close booked, closer to the exams. Compiling QTL tables. Again, QTL tables, something that worked really well for me for English Advanced and Extension. So a QTL table is basically a table. We've got a column for quotes, you've got a column for techniques, a column for effect, and then a column for link. And you basically go quote, technique, effect, link. And that way I know exactly what I'm supposed to talk about, and that goes straight into my essay. Brainstorming essay questions with friends can always help, like giving each other essay questions to write. Pretending or teaching others the links between your text and your rubric. That can be really helpful. And thinking like an examiner, like analyze past papers, look at and analyze your own writing, give yourself marks, but don't be like too harsh on yourself and be like, oh, this is useless, chuck this out the window. Not that kind of stuff. Be kind to yourself. Now, what can they ask you in essays? We've kind of talked about that, but they can ask you a lot. They can ask you questions that are about, prescribed character and relationships, or prescribed quote from like a passage or a scene, a theme or an idea, language features, critical perspective about a text. So they can give you like a critic quote and then ask you to sort of elaborate on that. They can ask you about the enduring value or significance of a text. And they can also ask about form. So last year's question was on form. So I would definitely recommend going back and checking the last 4 years of papers if you haven't already done that. You'll notice how unique the questions are, essentially how diverse they are now. So as you can see, like for example with let's say module C, right? So hopefully you've had a look at the module C 2022 question. If you haven't, I would 100% recommend checking it out very soon. So the module C essay question basically stumped a lot of people last year because it was a 15-5 split, but the 5, like you'd normally expect a reflection, wasn't a reflection. It was sort of in a module, it was sort of in a common module, like sort of a common module style question where they were like, they gave you a stimulus, and you had to write a 15 marker piece about like inspired by the stimulus, and then you had to consider, and I can't remember the exact verb they use, or evaluate how the stimulus used language features to sort of display or rather to convey ideas about personal fulfillment. So it was very common module esque where it was like asking you to look at how it represents personal fulfillment and so on, and you had to like link back to like techniques in the text. So it was a 5 marker. So yeah, definitely recommend checking that out. So that you can feel comfortable. Also, obviously checking out all other Module A, Module B questions. So we've already seen for both common module and, no, sorry, for both Module A and Module B, we've seen like quote questions, we've seen general questions. We have seen abstract questions as well, where they give you like an excerpt from the text and then they ask a, relevant question. So I know, for example, the 2021 question for Module A was like, there was an excerpt and it's like, how does this excerpt contribute to the broader textual conversation between your two texts? So a question like that, and that's where, like, if you go in with a prepared essay, it's a bit hard, in that moment to like think clearly and be like, this is how I'm going to map it out. Instead, I would again always recommend having your quotes, having your analysis ready, and then writing on the day, writing and answering the question directly. And this is something my teacher always used to say, is that the marker can immediately identify from the from reading your thesis what category, like what band category your essay is going to go in. Like they can always tell based on that initial first thesis, that initial first sentence. All right, where am I? Okay, poor time management exams. You're not gonna like this one. Again, I learned it. Kind of learned it the hard way. So, I was able to write everything luckily, but like before the exam, even I was like writing a bit over time. So make sure that if you are making it more challenging to write it in practice sessions, your exams will feel easier. So remember, like, and this is I think a really popular technique now, people who've like taped a battery or something heavy to their pen and they use that to write practice essays, and when they take it off, the hand flows really nicely. So try to do that. There are also similar challenges like writing on a towel. That's interesting, and it's obviously going to be very important. It's going to be really important that you're continuing writing and like practicing a lot. Also, do not squander your time if you aren't just getting it. It sounds obvious, but ensure that you're continuously working and improving on that. It's best to attempt the questions in descending order of confidence and knowledge. I think it works. I just attempted it back to front, front to back. That just worked for me, but attempt it in whatever way you want to attempt it. Just practice that beforehand, see what it works. Worst case scenario, remember, marker cares more about a completed essay as opposed to one with more content. So remember, always quality over quantity. So finish the sentence you're on, and then finish your conclusion if you're like running late. So just make sure, like, you're running out of time rather. It's not like you're catching a train, so you're running late, running out of time. So make sure you get in that conclusion. Really important. Stress is totally normal. All right, use it in your use it to your advantage. So remember, it's really important that you are focused on making sure you're getting in your main ideas. So sometimes you can even get marked down for crossing too much stuff or adding too many asterisks, and this can be unfair, but they markers only tend to spend less than 5 minutes per response. So you want to make it easy for them to read it, have them in a good mood. And markers read it in like one go. They're reading a couple of because they're paid, I think, like based on how many papers they mark. So they're paid on the as many papers that they can get through. So even if you think you've explained the idea and you're like, okay, it makes sense, or it's like it's kind of linking back and you're like, it makes sense, if you've read the text, it would make sense. But markers, they're gonna read it, like, they just give it to them, make it so clear that they cannot miss it. That's the best way to work with this, is to make it so clear that they cannot miss it. So make those links between the question and your writing really, really clear. Plan. It's always good to take a minute or two to plan before you start writing, rather than to get halfway through and think, what am I writing about? It can happen, right? So make sure you think, you give yourself that minute, 2 minutes, even 3 minutes, even to think before you get started. Because if you start off with a good plan, you are going to go a long way. You're going to get everything done. But if you just, jump straight to it without thinking, without planning, and, yeah, that's not going to be very helpful. So, yeah. So, in a plan, think about the thesis. Think about how your themes are going to map out against the thesis. That's really important. And topic sentences as well. So that's topic sentences is basically seeing how your themes will map out against the thesis. Another tip, very obvious, but resist the urge to fall into stream of consciousness. So what that means is, just continue writing and writing. You get a point and you keep going. Be concise. Markers are looking for succinct, concise responses. So, try to end a sentence wherever you could. So that means not having super long sentences. So, I'm not saying to have like super short sentences either, but try and write, like, like normal sentences, not like super 3-4 lines long, because if you read it, like, you're lost by the end of the sentence with a long sentence. So make sure you're not waffling. Other tips to maintain clarity is that, once again, if you want to practice, write out your responses with inhumanely perfect clarity. You need to practice. If you must cross something out, put a line. Put a line through it instead of scribbling it out. 9 out of 10 dentists would agree that the extra bit of info you want to add with that asterisk will cost you more marks that you could gain. So make sure that you are being clear, you are being concise. Okay, just quick final tips. Now, a good way to assess your confidence, especially obviously for English, but like this is really helpful for your other subjects. For like STEM subjects, I use this method for chem and bio and PD as well, and it worked really, really well. Is that doing like a traffic light system? Go through the syllabus, get a copy of the syllabus, and start highlighting. Highlight things red where you're like, do not ask me a question about this topic, I have no idea, I won't get any marks. Highlight yellow where you're like, okay, I kind of get it, I might get some marks, I might scrape some marks. Green is like, give me the questions about this idea, I'll be fine, I'll smash it out. So when you do that, now one thing really important is that don't just go everything goes red because you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, I don't know if I can do this. Believe in yourself. Yeah, give yourself the credit. You've done so well, you've come across this year, you're gonna get there. So give yourself some credit. Don't be too harsh on yourself, because you know what, if you just give everything red, you will stress yourself out, but then looking at the piece of paper and thinking, God, I don't know anything, and that's obviously downplaying your ability. So yeah, make sure you go red, yellow, green, and then once you've done that, go back, start with areas that are red and start improving on them, and then go to yellow, and that should get you there. And obviously you can revise the green stuff as well, but prioritize. So still stressing, making lists. Lists are always a really good way, and reflecting on what you are doing every day, that can show you that you've actually done something, that you're not just, that you're doing something, that you're trying, and that's so important. Planning pre-HSC study is going to look different. Ask yourself, what's your optimal time to study? What commitments do you need to plan around? Make sure you've got stuff happening outside of the HSC. Make sure you exercise. You go out into nature. The weather's, summer's going to be lovely. Go out, look after yourselves. And yeah, by go out, I mean, like, go into nature, have a walk, not like party the night before the exam. Not the best way to go. And also night before night before the exam, I always like to like not do work night before the exam, and I think that's what most people do, so not think about the exam the night before the exam. Don't try and cram in content night before, it's not gonna help. Don't stay up late trying to cram in content. Go to bed on time night before. Even if you still feel like, oh, what am I gonna do, just leave it. It's the next day, just trust yourself now. Yeah, watch a movie, do something the night before. I always used to watch Young Sheldon night before, loved it. Yeah, sometimes I'd squeeze in like 2 episodes, but I'd go to bed on time still, you know, like 10 o'clock is pretty good. So yeah. What else do I have? Yeah, started by making a calendar, like put in the dates. And this is from one of our awesome tutors, Bella. It was her timetable, as you can see, it's so perfect. And so put in the dates, and then you'll see that there's freedom coming at you soon. So, yeah, remember, stress is okay. Talk to someone if it is getting too overwhelming. HSC is not the end all or the be all. It does not define who you are as a person. So please look after yourselves, and I wish you all the very, very best. Yeah. Actually, you know, before I do that, it is tempting. Don't think about your responses after the exam. Yeah, leave it. Just leave it. Don't think about them. Don't try and discuss them too much with someone else. Yeah, this is really important. Just because you didn't think of like interpret responses in the same way doesn't mean you did it wrong. So do not stress. Just let it be. Especially with like unseen text and stuff. Just let it be. English is all about personal interpretation and voices. We tend to over amplify our faults and failures. Just let it go. Once you've done the exam, let it go. You will get through this. This is the end of our collective experience. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I wish you all the very, very best. You're going to smash it. Look after yourselves. It's so important to look after yourselves, and to consider how far you've come and how much you've done this year, and then to enjoy your summer afterwards. I'm so excited. I hope you're excited. Smash it out and then go enjoy. What is that? I think that's a little... Oh. Okay, no, I won't click on it. I think it's like a little drum roll, but I'll clap for you. Thank you so much. Have a lovely, and yeah, have a productive holiday. Smash out your exams, and good luck from all of us here at 8 Notes. Thank you so, so much. Enjoy. Take care. I will see you guys later. Best wishes for your exams. Thank you.